We're back now with House Speaker Matt Hall with an overtime segment. Let's pick up from the earlier program. I want to get at the tone of your voice when you talked to those two officials from Canada. Mm-hmm. Were you on the muscle or were you conciliatory? What was Matt Hall thinking? Did you read him a riot act?
Well, on the bridge,
no, not the bridge. I was
not very conciliatory on the bridge because that was a horrible deal that the people of Michigan were getting, and I was really grateful to work with Howard Lutnick and Pete Hoekstra and the Trump administration, and to get a better deal.
Were you angry?
I was definitely angry about the bridge. It was a bad deal, and we were being ripped off by the Canadians, and now we're going to have a great deal where we're going to have half of the revenues for the next 15 years. We estimate that's going to be about $300 million, and it's going to go to the United States for commerce. And we're also going to get a say in the tolls. So I think that's good. On the issue of the wildfires, I'm trying to persuade them to come in and testify before the committee because I think that it would be a real benefit to the people of Michigan.
But you weren't as angry.
No, because I want them to come and testify before the committee, and so I think that we could get a lot. The tone there is basically what is going on here, why are these wildfires happening, and what is the concrete plan to fix it? And what are you doing differently this year than last year? Because it seems like the smoke is a lot worse this year. And then what are you going to do differently next year?
And then if they're a no-show, you'll get angry.
I think we'll get them there. I don't know why the
Canadians... Why would they come here and take your questions?
I think the Canadians would want a good relationship with Michigan, and so I think that they'll want to explain to us why this is happening and what their solution is. And I'm hopeful that we can have a partnership to fix this problem. They clearly are not able to handle it on their own, and I think we need more collaboration. But rather than just yell at them, I think the first step is, hey, come and explain this to us. What's going on, and how are you working to solve the problem? I think that would be good, and I'm hopeful Congress will do the same thing. But the difference is, I can orchestrate this much faster. I could do this next week if they're willing, where with Congress, everything takes weeks and weeks. So I'd like to get some answers as soon as possible, and then you'll probably see Congress work on it too.
Is this the Oversight Committee?
We'll see which committee it is. Oversight is one that is very possible that it'll be.
What if the Canadian officials come in and say, well, what's going on is the globe is warming, temperatures are increasing, the forest is dry, and that's leading to these fires?
I don't think that is a solution. I mean, they can say that, but what is the solution to fix it?
I interviewed Bernie Sanders yesterday, and he said the solution is doing something about climate change.
You must have felt pretty good that you got to talk to Bernie.
I'm just telling you what he said. He's a U.S. senator.
That's a big interview for you.
It was a big interview. I mean, it's
you.
Right up there with this appearance right now.
Yeah, no, that's big for you. That's a feather in your cap, Craig. Congrats that you got to
not respond to the question.
And it's great you kind of forced that in here too, just to brag about it.
Man. It's all about
have you ever interviewed Bernie?
I have not.
I interviewed him yesterday.
Did you really? So everybody did interviews. Wow.
So let's hear it. Let's hear it.
Well, good for you. But she didn't bring it up. I had to ask her.
She just mentioned it.
Well, I had to ask her.
Okay.
I had to ask her.
All right, boys and girls.
But anyway, what is the solution that they're proposing to fix it, and what assurances can they give us that there's a plan? And I think it's going to take more collaboration with the United States. And I think someone like Mike Rogers would be the type of person who could help foster that.
Do you believe in climate change?
I don't believe that the climate change is necessarily caused by the things that they say it's caused by.
But you believe it's happening?
I believe that it's clear that the temperatures are hotter than they were at other times. But there's a lot of debate about what's causing that, right? And some people think that it's caused by the emissions. Other people think that it's cyclical, right? But regardless, it's an issue we're experiencing, and we need to... But in the case of the wildfires, we need a plan, right? We need a solution. And I think it's going to take a lot more collaboration with the United States.
I guess like what I'm wondering about is I think there's a certain segment of environmentalists who may see it as disingenuous to see this concern about air quality when it comes to the wildfires, but not air quality when it comes to burning coal plants or fossil fuel plants. And I'm wondering if you could respond to some of those concerns about why be so concerned about the air quality now when it's completely awful, but not necessarily the everyday levels of air quality, air pollution that we're seeing.
Sure. Well, these Canadian forest fires are because of an inability of the Canadian government to manage it, right? That's what's happening. In the case of the coal plant, Luke Meerman and myself, we wrote a letter to the Secretary of Energy, right, asking him to keep that coal plant open in West Michigan. And when he was here recently in Lansing with me, you heard him say, if we wouldn't have kept that coal plant open, we would have had potential brownouts during those very cold weeks in the wintertime. So there's a difference between a mismanaged forest fire and that trade-off between needing fossil fuels and keeping our energy system running, and you saw Governor Whitmer with her recent approval of Line 5, right? They gave 2 permits to Line 5, Eagle and DNR recently, and I applaud Governor Whitmer for that. But you need that pipeline open to heat homes. You need it to keep manufacturing plants running. I mean, that's why you have fossil fuels. And if you look at the wind and solar, it's much more expensive. It's not reliable, and you can't power manufacturing with it. You can't heat your homes with it, and you can't do it affordably, right? And that's one of the reasons why the energy bills keep going up. There are these Whitmer mandates, right? The banning fossil fuels by 2040, getting rid of natural gas. That's driving up the cost, and it's leading to a lot of really angst with putting the windmills and the solar panels all over, just shoving them down on people with the Public Service Commission. That's why House Republicans, we've introduced an energy plan that would focus on not all this political stuff, but affordability and reliability. We need a reliable grid, and we need it affordable, which means we need fossil fuels like natural gas.
Mr. Speaker, if this is a stupid question, tell me. You guys have complained about the Lieutenant Governor being a no-show at his work. Have I heard that correctly?
Yeah, he's not there.
So what is the difference between him and your members taking basically the entire month of July off to campaign so they can get reelected? Is there a difference?
Well, yeah, because what's interesting. So when
Do you get the point of my question?
Well, so when Joe Tate was the Speaker and the Democrats controlled the House, we had the lowest number of House sergeants. I think there were 13 House sergeants. Now we're up to 23 House sergeants, okay? And when I was working on this, I say, why are these people leaving? They said, because every day we come to work and the building's empty. It's empty. There was nobody there. If you go back and look at how many days they had session under the Democrat trifecta, it was very few. If you look at the pace that we've at, I said to these sergeants, I said, look, one thing when I'm Speaker, you're going to have a great quality of life at work because we're going to be here all the time. And we've kept that pace. We've passed over 100 more bills in the Senate, and that helped me a lot when we were doing the negotiations on the budget because I had 100 more bills to choose from.
I understand that, but the question was, is it fair for you to complain about the Lieutenant Governor who's a no-show when your people are not in our town working during the month of July so they can get reelected?
Well, you look at Gilchrist, I mean, he showed, and now the Senate has very few session days compared to the House. Did you do the research on that? It's a lot fewer days they've had. We're there voting all the time. And what you saw was that when they're there voting, Gilchrist is not there. So if I call session, I expect the people to be there. I mean, I'm talking about committee hearings occurring over the summer on the Canadian wildfires. Gilchrist is not showing up all year.
So would you call these folks back during this run-up to the primary to hold a hearing?
Yes.
You would?
Yes. But I'm just saying Gilchrist isn't showing up for work all year, and then he's also not there when there's no session, right? But there's a huge difference.
Karen Whitset, one of your allies?
Well, Karen Whitset's not running.
Are you concerned about how often she doesn't come?
Karen Whitset's not running for higher office.
She holds an office.
But she's not running for higher office where Gilchrist is. Gilchrist is saying, elect me for Secretary of State, and I've showed up for something like 4 or 6% of the session days.
Well, and Representative
I was there for 100% of the session days.
Representative B is saying exactly the same thing back home.
Who is?
Take a representative who's running for re-election. Wouldn't they be saying the same thing during the month of July?
Well, they showed up for hundreds of session days. Garland Gilchrist has shown up for 4% of the session days. That's a big difference. And we've kept a pace much more aggressive than the Senate Democrats or in Gilchrist or the House last year. I mean, and when we did the deal on the budget, I had all these other bills they didn't have. And so if you notice, the House, we have more public acts than the Senate. And we passed, 66 good public acts? And maybe it was 67. But whatever it was, we had a lot more to choose from because we had 100 more bills passed the House.
Speaker, I'm curious, what's realistic in terms of the coming months? Are there any policy issues you're hoping to get through before November elections? Especially, this time, a lot of people are fighting back home for their swing seats. What do you think policy-wise is a realistic option for the rest of the year?
Well, I was really disappointed we couldn't get the medical debt across the line. That was something that I've been working very hard on with Kathy Schmaltz and some of our other reps. And what we're trying to do is stop these hospitals from doing all these predatory practices. So if you have a medical emergency, unexpected, and you're in debt because of it, and then these hospitals hire debt collectors and they go out and they foreclose on your home and they garnish your wages, that's inappropriate. So what we want to do is prevent those practices and have reasonable practices because a medical emergency is not a reason for them to do this to you. So I was hopeful we could get that across the line. We couldn't because Sarah Anthony wanted like 6 public acts. I said, we're not going to give Sarah Anthony all 6 public acts. We can split them up. We can share the public acts. So it's all about a fight of, Sarah Anthony wanting all the credit. And so it's crazy. Like, we agree on the policy, but we got to work through that. So I think we can probably figure that out before November.
I know you have to go, but did the governor's office ever contact you and tell you at any point, we're opposed to these 9 bills that were left in limbo?
No, I never spoke to them about it, but
why did you send them the bills that day?
Well, and I want to be clear. I mean, the governor was very clear from the beginning that she was on the Senate Democrat side on this, and you heard her spokesman point that out.
Clear about that?
Over and over, she was very clear. And you ask her spokesman.
I don't recall this.
He'll tell you.
Just to be clear.
Maybe you were covering this up. You run a lot of interference for the governor, Craig.
So the governor's office never had a conversation with you about these 9 bills?
No,
I just don't believe.
no.
Never.
No. And remember,
the budget office, anyone?
No. But remember the history of this. Joe Tate, the Democrat speaker, refused to present these bills. And then I was speaker for 8 days, and the Senate Democrats sued me. And Governor Whitmer was very on their side on that, and everyone knew that. And then and they sued me, and we went through the whole court system. I looked at it and just said, I'm going to present the bills. Now, there was no court order telling me I had to present the bills. What would happen is the Supreme Court didn't take up the case. Then we could motion to reconsider their opinion. There would be further hearings in the trial court. And we would make our case there. But I didn't have any court order. I just looked at it and said, look, I've been working with the Democrats. They gave me a great decisive victory on the budget where we made the budget smaller than last year. We blocked all of Whitmer's tax increases. We stopped all of her raids on the rainy day fund. It was a decisive victory for the Republicans in the budget. And I just said, you know what? I'm going to send these bills. There's no court order here. I'm going to send these bills. I don't have any idea what Whitmer's going to do. She's on their side. But she looked at it, and said, well, we just finished the budget. There's no way to pay for this. It's going to cost tens of millions of dollars to put all this money into the state pension system. I talked to one university that said it was going to cost them $9 million to do the health care change.
Mr. Speaker, I'm going to get in trouble with your staff.
No, it's okay.
Are you sure?
Yeah, let me just finish
You'll cover
this.
me because they're going to be on my case.
I just want to finish this, Tim.
All
So
right.
it was going to cost one university $9 million to do the change to the health care, the 80-20, where they went from the lowest that the local governments, the state government, and the universities could pay was the lowest, or it used to be the most they could pay on health care was 80%, and that's the current law. What they wanted to do was change it to where the minimum was 80%. If you made that change, it would have been, like I said, one university told me $9 million for their healthcare costs, so you would have had that compounded over every local government, which did not get much of a revenue sharing increase this year, and you would have had that over the state government too. So I think the governor looked at it and just said, I've got huge liabilities that are unfunded in the state budget. I'd have to reopen the state budget. There's all kind of administrative problems with the dates. I mean, you'd have to go back in time to do all this stuff with the dates. And then third, you had all these new laws passed. So all these new laws passed, and this would erase those new laws, because when you have a law in the same section and you don't account for that in the next law, it erases the law. So I didn't know what the governor would do, but I knew either way. I presented her the bills. If she signed it, it would give me a lot of leverage because we'd have to go back and fix all of that, and then I would have things I want to do, like property tax reform and the hospital price review board, or she would veto it. But I look at this in every lawsuit, whether it was the work project lawsuit where I sued every department in state government over their billions in slush funds, and I won that with a settlement with Whitmer, or this. I win on every one of these, one way or the other. It's just this one was a little more conventional, but I won in the end. The bills got vetoed, and that was what matters. So I'm grateful to Governor Whitmer for vetoing them, but I had no idea what she was going to do.
Mr. Speaker, thanks for showing up. Did you have fun?
Oh yeah, thank you, Tim. Okay. So maybe we did this 3 times last year, so we're behind pace, but it was great to be here with you in this distinguished panel.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks, guys.